sound of yesterday. Barstools and Bandtalk, and memories live on. Barstools and Bandtalk with Dave and Sean.
Oh, that'd be, oh yeah. Well, hey.
Dave.
And I'm Sean.
This is Barstools
and Bandtalk, the complete maritime music bucket list.
You
And everybody's going to be asking, how do they do it? How do they do it? And I will say, we've had Tommy Maillet has been very helpful the last couple of days with us. I was talking with this next gentleman, and then we just kind of weren't able to get it together, and then Tommy kind of gave us a hand. I'm really excited to have this chat. This gentleman was the guitar player in a band that was the very first band I had ever seen in a bar. And I don't mean like first, I mean first band. I saw them live. A friend of mine's girlfriend's brother had seen them and said, you guys got to get down there and see them. And I snuck into the Crazy Horse underage, shaking all the way in, and got in and was blown away. This band, I tell you, everybody will remember them. And what a band they had! They had a couple albums, I believe 3 albums.
3 albums.
And just wicked players, just all around amazing band. And for me, we're one of the ones that sort of set the tone.
It's true. Sean's talked about that a long time. It's one of these bands he keeps going back to as a go-to band. And it was kind of reminiscent of the fun times of the 80s. So we're going to bring on Greg Fraser from the band Brighton Rock, and he's got some cool stuff on the go now, too. We'll talk about that. But in the meantime, he's kind of a Blackhawks fan. If you're an anti-Blackhawks fan, you don't have to watch the video, but he's a big Blackhawks fan.
Say that again. I think I just got the end of what you were saying here.
He said you're a big Blackhawks fan, Greg.
Absolutely. Hardcore.
So, good friend of mine is Cam Russell that used to play for the Blackhawks. He actually runs the junior hockey team here, and told me some great stories about when he played with Jeremy Roenick and whatever. But he said, pound for pound, the hardest guy that ever fought in his life was Ty Domi, because as you're hitting him, he's laughing at you.
Oh, he's like a little tree stump, that guy.
Yeah. So Cam tells some great stories. Not a whole. There's Jeremy Roenick, larger than life. That's all I can say right now, without getting everybody in too much trouble.
Roenick's the best, man. He's still funny. I still love his interviews and his little chats that he does and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. He's a legend, man. Those are the days, man. Chelios, oh yeah.
Well, and I'll tell you that the other funny thing, Cam told me a story about Chelios out partying all night, and he got about 2 hours sleep, and he told the trainer, he said, wheel the bike into the sauna, and he biked for about 6 hours and went out and had a heck of a game. So, I mean, he was hardcore, that fella.
Oh, yeah. He's let all the booze out.
Is that all it takes?
Yeah.
I wish I knew that.
The other thing, yeah. But the last funny one was Cam one day called me out of the blue, and he says, do you know a guy named Andy Curran? I said, well, I remember Andy when I was in Toronto. Anyway, when the Blackhawks used to play, they used to hang out with Andy at PM Toronto's, which was just beside Maple Leaf Gardens. And so we were able to reconnect them, I guess, because Andy's managing a band that we had on the show. So they're going to reconnect after 20 some odd years. Kind of cool.
Oh, cool. If you talk to Andy, tell him I said hi. We go way back, man. Andy's got actually a nice tattoo on his ankle. Not too many people know that. The Hawks logo. So he's another diehard.
Oh, cool.
Oh, right on. Very good. So, Greg, when we were doing the intro here, and I kind of told you when I was messaging you, Brighton Rock was the first band I ever saw live in a bar. God's honest truth. The Crazy Horse in Dartmouth. A friend of mine's, no longer with us. There's a hole in the ground now. We'll get you a picture, but a friend of mine's girlfriend's brother went out and saw you guys, and Ted said to me, you got to go check this band out. So me and a buddy went the next night, and I remember shaking trying to get in the door, but we got in, and I went the next 3 nights. I think it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday that I saw you guys, and just blown away. I mean, you guys were the total package. You had great tunes. You had a great look. You could all play. And for somebody who, you know, was just kind of learning, wow, what a great way to friggin' get your arse kicked.
Well, I appreciate hearing that, man. Yeah, we used to love the Crazy Horse. Halifax in general, we were one of the first big cities, radio-wise, to really embrace our band when the record came out. Q104, I believe it was, right?
That's right.
That's right.
That's exactly right.
And you know, we'd be there. You know, you go on at night. So the daytime, you'd listen to local. You put the local station on and to see if they mention you, and they'd be playing our songs and talking about us, and they had commercials, and we're like, that was a first for us. Like around Toronto, you might hear a song 1 or 2 times a day, maybe, but here they are doing full commercials for the ad, like for the Crazy Horse, and playing our songs, and we ended up going there and doing interviews, and that was like, wow, you know, we really felt like we were starting to make it in Halifax, of all cities. First one that we really noticed, like, hey, I think we're on to something here, man, and people are really starting to dig it. So Halifax holds a special place in our hearts for sure.
That's really nice to hear. Tell me when did the band start now, Greg? So like you guys, you're obviously all from Ontario, is that right? You're all from like Niagara Falls area. Where are you from?
Yeah, me and our bass player Stevie Screeves, we grew up in Niagara Falls here, and we started the band. We had a different singer, different drummer, different keyboard guy at the beginning, you know, so you have to go through some member changes. Yeah. And then we got Jerry. He was our second singer. He's from Hamilton, and we ended up getting Everzan. He's also from Hamilton. Mark was our third drummer. And Johnny, who's also from Hamilton, he was our third keyboard player. You know, so I don't know if you remember, did you guys ever hear of a group called The Hunt way back then?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Well, the drummer, his name is Paul Kersey. And like you guys, you know, when I was underage, I'd go to the local bar here in Niagara Falls, Uncle Sam's. And that was like my university. People go to school to learn. Well, that was my university, University of Uncle Sam's. And, you know, a young kid, years old, and anybody who's recording act, you know, I would go study these bands and, you know, like, wow, because back then you had to have a certain amount of talent to even make demos and records because it was so expensive. You know, not like today, you can record on your phone, but back then you couldn't do that. So anybody that had a record deal, you had to show them some facts to say, well, these guys must be good for a record label to take a chance on them. So a lot of these bands would come through Uncle Sam's, and you know, Max Webster would play there, and Saga and stuff like that, and The Hunt played there quite a bit. And Paul Kersey, the drummer, he was the original drummer for Max Webster. He's on the very first, you know, on the record with the heads, square heads, Hangover. That's Paul Kersey on drums.
Oh wow!
So then, so he left Max Webster and formed The Hunt. Great band, man, killer. If you go on YouTube and check them out, you know, great singer, great songs, and I used to worship these guys. And Paul Kersey in particular, he was like the David Lee Roth of drums. I mean, to this day, I've never seen a more flamboyant drummer than this guy. He was a show in himself, man. Like he had like floor toms on each side of his kit, and he had flash bombs going through, and just oh yeah, he was just a total showman. We loved him, right? So when we're starting to get close, starting to get record label interest, unfortunately we had to fire our first drummer. The record label thought he just wasn't up to par. So our manager goes, well, who would you want if you could have a drummer? Oh, I'd like somebody like Paul Kersey. That'd be great, you know. Let's give him a call. The Hunt broke up. What? Sure enough, Paul Kersey's our drummer.
Wow.
Yeah, he was our drummer. So we're on the verge of getting a record deal, but we didn't have the record deal yet, so we didn't have a lot of money. We're starting to get momentum in the clubs and stuff like that, but we still weren't making a ton of money. And, you know, for Paul, that was kind of going backwards for him. He knew we were going to get a deal, but it was still like, so, you know, we're still staying in crappy hotels, making crappy money. And so it didn't kind of work out in the end. And so we had to let him go. And then we got Mark Cabrazan, and it's been great ever since there, man.
Right.
Yeah. Mark, I've never seen a guy that hits the drum so hard for not a big man in my life. I used to love watching him play.
Killer drum.
So, oh my God, so controlled, so just tasty. But he had the big hair, and just the way he used to move was just so cool. And he just really, he was showing himself too, right?
Oh, he's one of the best drummers, man. I truly mean that. He's phenomenal. phenomenal drummer. Yeah.
Well, and I remember you guys toured with Haywire, and we've had the boys on the show, and I remember Sean Kilbright always used to talk so highly about Mark.
Sean's a great guy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny you mentioned Sam's in Niagara Falls, because I played there twice, and I think I was more scared to play Sam's than I was Toronto, because like I said to you in my message, what the hell is in the water in Niagara Falls, man? There's so many good musicians in there. It's unreal.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, I think might have been because we're a border town with Buffalo and Niagara Falls. We get a lot, when we grew up, we weren't just like listening to Canadian radio. So we would I listened to the Buffalo station more than anything else. Right. So we'd hear a lot of music we'd never hear in Canada. Like I was listening to UFO and early Scorpions and early Grease before nobody knew who they were. They were still playing clubs. But Buffalo, and a group called Talus, like one of my early. Do you remember?
Yeah.
Billy Sheehan.
Yeah, we used to open for Talus all the time. So, you see bands like that and hear bands like that. It's an influence on us instead of just being another Canadian band. Because I always felt, when I was trying to get our first record deal, we didn't want to sound Canadian, because Canadian to me always kind of played a little more safe. Yeah. And you know what I mean? And like we didn't have a Van Halen, we didn't have a Motley Crue, we didn't have like Twisted Sister and all these other. Canada didn't have any, so we got to be that band, and we didn't get as big as that, obviously, but we tried. And like you said, around the area you got Svengali and you got Honeymoon Suite, and it's a lot of talent in this area. So I think radio is probably a big part of it.
And you're only half hour. You could go to Buffalo within half hour. Just go across the border, and you're right there. So you would have seen a lot more concerts, like you said. The university, you could study these bands, right?
Are you freezing up there, Davo?
Was it?
Yeah.
I said
Buffalo is. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was just saying you could go across the border and easily see these bands where you couldn't do that in other parts of Canada. I'm sure, right?
No, border town, Niagara Falls, New York is like literally you just cross a bridge and you're in America, and then Buffalo's 30 minutes where I live right here. Yeah, so I mean it's great. It's a different vibe, and America, back when you're young, like a lot more free and not so restrictive. Like you always felt like they really party there, man. You go to tailgate parties and all that kind of stuff. They don't do that kind of stuff here in Canada. I don't know if you've ever been to a Buffalo Bills game or something like that.
Yep. It's crazy.
But, the tailgate parties and all that stuff, you don't see that in Canada. These guys having full-on barbecues, and it's like, holy jeez, these guys know how to rock, man. So, you go watch a lot of local Buffalo bands that were big around here, but never really caught on. They were big influences on us,
Sure.
and they I don't know what it is with them, but a lot of it, they weren't so afraid to let loose compared to Canadians, like that's what I felt anyways. I go a lot of, I see a lot of talented musicians in Canada, but they wouldn't let loose, on stage. You kind of just stand there and kind of, they were almost afraid to start sweating or something, and so I made sure you got to find the right guys that were, hey man, it's 100% no matter what. Every time you hit that stage, there's no phoning it in, ever, ever, ever. I mean, we've been told many times, we go hit a city and say the place holds 500 people and only 150 people would show up. We would kick ass, man, and people would be thanking us like, I can't believe it. We thought you guys would phone it in, and this is the best show I've ever seen in my life. And some of our best shows were shows just like that, where it wasn't sold out. It was only a quarter full. But we had something to prove. It's like, you know what? We're going to make sure these people talk about us when we leave. Right. And then when next this place will be sold out. And sure enough, that's what happened. You start building up followings and stuff like that. And man, it's so America is a big part of us growing up here for sure.
So take us back to the first album then, Greg. So when did the first album come out?
It got released in 1986, produced by Michael Wagner, who went on after us. He went on to the record he was working on at the time that wasn't out was Dokken Under Lock and Key. So after us, this record was White Lion. Then he did Extreme, and then he did Skid Row. So he took right off after us. So we like to think we were the reason why he's as big as he is.
What was it like to work with him, Greg? Because I've heard so many different sorts of things. I heard he was definitely a guitar guitar player's producer, but I've heard a ton of different things. What was he like to work with?
He was fantastic. Because we were assigned to a major label, we had enough money to hire somebody. We also had a guy named Jack Richardson, who's a legendary Canadian producer, Hall of Famer. He helped us with all pre-production and stuff like that. And when we got our deal, the production part's like a big thing. Who's going to produce? And so a lot of these Canadian guys wanted to produce us, and I'd hear the tapes and they'd send them to me because I'm kind of like the studio guy, and it's like, it just sounds safe, man. Like there's just no balls behind it, right? And one of the guys was Miles Goodwin from April Wine. He wanted to produce our record, and it's just the song. He's a great songwriter, but the sounds I was hearing, it's like it's just predictable, nothing new. Right. Everything's kind of safe and like no edge. And I don't know how Michael's name got into the mix, but they sent me the Under Lock and Key demos that weren't released yet, and I heard that record and went, that's the one. That's whoever this guy is. This is the guy we got to get. I have no idea who he is. Never knew he was German. And I talked to him on the phone, and it's like, oh yeah, this is the guy. He was fantastic to work with. We didn't have a huge budget, even though we were assigned to a major. A lot of money was tied up in a lot of different things. So, needless to say, because a record was recorded in Toronto, we didn't have any money left over. All the money went for production and all this other stuff. Nothing went really into our pockets, so we couldn't afford hotel rooms. So a lot of times the sessions would go late. Instead of driving back to Niagara Falls every single day, we would literally sleep at the studio, like without the owners even knowing, like in the drum booth, the vocal booth, hiding coaches, like not letting them know. I gotta find these pictures, like we're in sleeping bags, and so we didn't have a lot of money. And Michael would take us out for dinner every day. He'd buy us dinner like almost every single day. It's like, wow, man. To this day, I still remember that. He could see we're hungry. We would never say, hey, Michael, we're hungry, man. Like you just any money we did have, we'd buy beer with it and stuff like that. Right, let's get beer, right? I don't worry about getting the hot dogs. That's good enough for us, right? But he wanted to make sure we were eating healthy to a certain extent, so he get the best out of us. And that
makes sense.
And like I said before, with a lot of the Canadian producers, they're not all bad. Don't get me wrong, but the record company wants the singles. Give me a single. I want singles. We want radio. That's all we care about, radio, right? And then Mike would come down and go, hey, man, I really love the sound of that record, the new Dokken record you're working. Like, that sounds killer. Like, if we could sound anything like that, it'd be fantastic. But, what about some of the label really wants a lot of singles? Fuck the singles. We're going to fucking rock. Like, all right. This is definitely the guy, man. Right on.
Yeah. And you know what? You're bang on, because, I think about some of that 80s stuff, like big sort of fat, loose-sounding snare, and it just over-processed and not, you know what I mean? Just, you're right. Just very safe. Not a lot of balls. No.
Listen to the first Skid Row record, man. There you go. That speaks for its just balls out, and let's kick some serious ass. Yeah. And it was fantastic. Did you hear any negatives about Michael, or you said you heard a bunch of different?
No, none whatsoever. I actually, because he's one of my favorite producers ever. And obviously the Dokken album. I loved the second Striper album that he produced. And anyway, I just read a ton of stuff, and one of the ones for me that I just remember reading was Dave Sabo talking about one of the songs on that first Skid Row album, and it was one take, and he was all nervous and how Wagner walked him through it, and he just sounded like a really, really cool guy. So it's nice to hear that that is the case.
It's raw sounding. That's the term. Like, and I know what you're saying with the safeness, and you're right. It's kind of a Canadian staple. So it's like, well, we don't want to offend anybody, and please and thank you, and blah 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 blah. But if you have something like this that's raw like that, it's memorable. You don't forget it, right? And you need your singles. You're right, but same time, it can be a raw single. Like, and you guys did well with that. Skid Row did well with that. Dokken did well with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, he's great for that. And like you mentioned, he's a guitar producer for sure. There was times where it's like, that guitar sounds great. No, it's not good enough yet. Really? Okay, let's get another amp.
Yeah.
This sounds still sound better. It's like, all right. And sure enough, the end result is like, it's killer, man. Like my guitar, my leads, it's like, man, I could never get those sounds like live like I wanted to, because Michael knows how to tweak and EQ and the heck out of stuff, you know, to really pull things out that aren't even there sometimes. And he's great with vocalists too. He can really get the best out of singers and the whole band. I mean, he really got the best out of us, and it was a real honor to work with him. Great guy. And we just Brighton Rock did the Monsters of Rock cruise in 2019. Yep. And with big bands, Extreme was there, and Skid Row was there, and Queensryche, and all those Faster Pussycat, and all those bands are all there. And Michael was there, and you know, we got a chance to hang out with Michael. And before we went on, I think our first show or second show, Michael comes back with Udo from Accept. So we're
cool.
Yeah, because they grew up together. They're like, they knew each other before. Yeah, they knew each other before they were even teenagers. They started their first bands together, so they're brothers in arms.
I was a huge
cool.
Accept fan. Yeah.
They don't get to see each other too much, so that's kind of cool to see that dynamic, you know. I didn't know what they're talking. Each other was always in German, and every once in a while they look over. They're talking about us. What are they saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, but Michael's a legend.
Well, you mentioned
go ahead.
No, well, you mentioned the vocal thing, because I mean, it's like out here, we could never find vocalists. I mean, and I remember hearing that first album, and I remember going like, where the frig did they find a guy like that? I mean, we could never find singers. It was like, if you could kind of sing, even if you're out of key, we take you and whatever.
Right.
But I mean, he's one of those, you know, distinctive sounding vocalists. He does, like, you know, when he's not doing the growl, he's got a very, you know, nice voice, but I mean, he's got that growl. And I mean, I remember going live going, this guy's going to lose his voice. And he never did.
No. And even now, like we, you know, our original records are all tuned, piano pitch, A440, and we still play live down, and he still hits all the notes, man, effortlessly. That's cool. He's probably Canada's most powerful singer. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that has that kind of power, that kind of range.
Consistently,
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can't think of anybody. Maybe Mike Reno. He doesn't have the rasp, but he can hit those high notes. But other than that, no real guys that can really sing like Rob Halford, you know, like Bruce Dickinson, like has the power behind it. Yeah, he's a legend, man. Honored to play with that guy for sure.
Wicked.
Absolutely.
How was the Monsters of Rock tour? Because I kind of wondered how those things went, like how they sell out every year, every single time. I'm a little surprised. But was it fun? Was it too throwback-ish? Was it cheesy? Was it cool?
You talking about the Monsters of Rock cruise?
Yeah, Monsters of Rock.
It was fantastic, man.
Yeah.
I would go just as a fan every year if I could. Absolutely. Well, the band started at 12 noon, and they go till 12 at night. And there's like, and they have it so they're kind of like, say one band starts at noon, another band will start at 12:45. So it gives you time to go, you know, watch another band. It's band after band after band, and then you'll stop like in Jamaica, and they'll have a band like Kip Winger singing on the beach with an acoustic. You go there, some margaritas, and you go back, and it's like, hey, what do you want to do? You want to go get something to eat, or you want to go watch the Bullet Boys? I don't know. Let's go get something to eat. We'll catch the last few. You don't get in driving. You just take your drinks. You just watch your room and the elder down the hallway, like everywhere you go. And everybody there are all the same fans of music as you. Yeah. Everybody's there to fans. So there's 5,000 people there, and they're all your friends. It's like you feel like you're all the same, you know, tribe, if lack of a better word, you know. Sure. And fantastic, man. Oh God, you're on the water and bands, and the production's phenomenal. Oh yeah. So these bands, top of the food chain with the gear they had there for sure, man. Like Y&T and Tesla, like this was so killer, man. You know, and I'm a fan just like you guys are. I'm watching all these bands. I was like, you know, pinching myself at the same time. It's like I never thought Niagara Falls, Canada, because, you know, Niagara Falls, we don't see rock stars and stuff like that, and movie stars, and, you know, I'm sharing the elevator with Pat Travers, like, hey man, what's going on? You know, like, it's the weirdest thing, all these different bands, and it was awesome. I'd go back in a heartbeat, just not even to play, just to hang out again. It was fantastic. Highly recommend it.
Wicked.
And it's funny you say that, Greg, because the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 interviews, Darby Mills, we had Dave from Svengali on the other night, and I keep saying to people, it's so nice when you meet somebody that you grew up listening to, such as yourself, and you're a good guy, you're not a dick, because you know what it's like to meet that person that's a dick, right?
Oh yeah.
So you must have been like, you meet these guys and you're hoping and praying that they're good guys, and when they are, awesome. And if they're dicks, you never want to say that they're dicks. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, of all the rock stars I've met, I might as well be honest. The one rock star I met that was kind of a dick was Geddy Lee from Rush, of all people.
Oh,
I hate to
really?
say. Yeah, he was kind of like, you know, I was before I started Brighton Rock, I was in a band called Lennox, and the original guitar player for Lennox is Johnny D, the lead singer of Honeymoon Suite. He was the lead guitar player for Lennox. He decided to quit Lennox to form Honeymoon Suite, which was going to be a solo band, but then it became Honeymoon Suite. So I replaced him in Lennox, and we were recording a record with, I don't know if you guys familiar with the name Mick Ronson?
Yep.
Yeah, he's lead guitar for David Bowie back in the Ziggy Stardust days.
Okay.
You see, like Randy Rhoads, he's real, you know, he's a legend in himself. And so he was producing us. And at Phase One Studios, you have Studio A and you have Studio B, but there's two studios, but you share the same lounge and you share the same kitchen. So, you know, the producer, the drummer's working on a snare for an hour and a half. So, oh, let's go watch TV or something. I don't want to listen to a snare any longer than I have to. He goes sit in the lobby. And so we were there for 2-3 weeks, I think it was. But in the other studio, guys would book, you know, a few days, and then somebody else can, like David Wilcox would be there for a few days, and then Tom Cochran would be there for a few days. So one day, I asked him, who's in there today? Boys Brigade. I said, Boys Brigade. Okay, I'm not really familiar with them. I was 19 back then, by the way, and so all of a sudden I'm in the lobby, and I'm looking at the TV, and right across, like I'm looking, like say the TV's right in front of me, right behind me, coming out of the studio like this was Geddy Lee. I went, that's Geddy Lee. So I'm sitting with my keyboard player. I go, holy shit, that's really Geddy Lee, man. And so he's in the kitchen. I go, well, you know what? I gotta get something out of the fridge for a second. I gotta walk over there. See, he's making like a sandwich or something. I go, Geddy Lee, no way, man. Any chance I can get a picture with you? And he's like, really? I just like, I took that as a yes. I went, Fred, get the camera, man. Geddy's gonna get a picture so you can see. I'm like this in the picture, and he's like this in the picture. He's like, he just didn't want to have anything. You don't have anything to do with it. And it's like, well, that wasn't very cool, man. Like, you know, what? I don't.
I'll make your sandwich for you, man. I'll finish your sandwich for you if you get a picture taken with me.
Yeah. Well, I remember I grew up a big Triumph fan. They were one of the few bands back in the day that they used to play on radio here, and I had the opportunity to be in a band that opened for Rick Emmett, and he was probably one of the nicest guys I ever met. And it was just like, yes, you know what I mean? Like, it's you know.
We played the Halifax Metro Center with opening for Triumph, actually.
Yes, you did. When I was at that show, 100%.
Yeah, the Triumph guys were. Matter of fact, we did our. Was our second record there? I think. Actually, no. It was our third. We did some production and stuff at Meadowworks. I should say, owned by Gil Moore, the drummer, and then we did our whole third record there. At the Meadowworks. So we got to, you know, with touring and stuff, we really got to know Gil especially very well. Those guys are all awesome. You know, I find that with all the Canadian guys except for Geddy sometimes. You know, I love. I don't want to speak badly, but you know, it is what it is. But the Triumph guys were super awesome, man. Super awesome. You know, like Rick would come backstage and, you know, pump us up before we go on and stuff like. You know, he didn't have to do that. You know, a lot of big bands, you don't even get to see them. Like I heard bands would tour with Kiss for like a week and never even meet them once. You know, like even like the bigger bands, they don't even want nothing to do with the opening band, Motley Crue and stuff like that. You know, so you remember that kind of stuff. You know, even to this day. And so when we have opening bands for us, we always remember that. You know, they're getting a big kick of that. So I always make a point and go saying hi to the guys and, you know, wish them well and pump them up, and you know, that's the way it should be.
That's really cool.
Absolutely.
Really cool.
Well, I remember when we opened for Rick, it was the year that the Jays won their first World Series, and if you remember, the game went in extra innings, and so we did 2 sets. Yep. Well, it was the year before Joe Carter. They were playing Atlanta, and
Oh,
anyway, it went in extra innings, and Rick would not go on stage till the game was over. So we're sitting there waiting. As soon as it was over, boom, he went on and he played. I think he played till 4:00 that night. It was incredible.
Oh yeah, killer band he had back to the Rick Emmett band back then. Was that?
Oh yeah,
Randy Cook on drums. Back
Randy
then?
Cook, Marty Anderson. Do you know Marty Anderson? Keyboard player.
I'm not sure. I've met so many musicians, man, like this over the years. You know, all the bands we played. It's one of those things that if I meet, oh yeah, I know this dude. Sometimes the names don't know. I'm really bad for names. I mean, I got two kids that I remember.
Yeah. Marty actually has a production company in Mississauga called Midnight Hour Productions.
Okay.
And yeah, so and I think he's playing with Matt who's the Michael Bublé, Matt Tusker. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway.
Right. I know who you mean.
Yeah. Good guy. But
So
I digress.
Take us back to what you're doing now, my friend. So Brighton Rock, like the band. I mean, it was awesome. I don't even know how many times you guys played down here, but it was a huge following in Halifax for sure. For folks who love the band, 3 albums in. So you're bringing what 92 maybe?
What's in 92?
I'm trying to think what year the last album came out.
Yeah, it would have been 91, and I think we broke at 92. End of 92, we broke up after that, and that was it. Yep. Yeah, and we toured since 1985 right to 1991. We toured every year. We went to Nova Scotia and to BC. We crisscrossed this country. I forgot how many times, And then after Brighton Rock, I joined Helix. Same thing, back and forth. So cool.
And actually, Greg, I guess is doing better after that little bit. I heard he had an issue. He fell off the roof of his house or something.
What's that?
Greg, the Helix drummer.
Yeah, Greg Fritz. Yeah, Fritzy Hines. Yeah. Yeah, he had a bit of a fall, man. It was pretty scary there for a while. And thank God he's back to normal, man, because I don't know if he landed on his head or I can never get the straight stories, all conflicting reports. But, it was initially the report was touch and go. I said, no way, wow. Fritz. Yeah, because, he's a great guy, man. That guy's
he's a character, man.
Yeah, on the road, you never see him ever get in a bad mood. I never see the guy lose his temper. Like any band, you get to a hotel or something, it's like, this place sucks, this room sucks, whatever. You're tired, you're driving all night, and Fritz is always like, it's okay, man. He always was cheerful, and I love Fritz for that. Man. Always made the best out of the worst situations sometime,
Yeah. So how long was your stint with Helix for?
That was at least 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
And so then after that, it's like, you know what? I'm done touring, man. I did it since I was 16 years old. I quit high school, end of grade 10, going into grade 11. I quit high school, and I never went back. And I just toured, band after band after band after band, till the time I was about 34 years old. And that was it, man. I said, unless the money's phenomenal or we could fly out to gigs everywhere, I just can't take it anymore. It just kills you, man. It really does, But,
so what the hell did you do with your time?
Well, after that, I started my own little solo thing. It was called Phrase Gang. I released a couple of solo records with that, and took the odd job here and there. Did a lot of acoustic stuff. Me and the bass player from Helix, Darryl, we had a weekend band. We play quite a bit called Scurvy Dogs, and they're still together now. Yeah, the guitar. I forgot the guitar. Is it Chris? One of the guitar players in Helix now. He's it's a 3-piece. So he's got it's Chris, I think, and Jamie Constance. He filled in for Fritz when he got that injury. Jamie's a drummer from Sire. You ever remember a group called Sire?
I know. Yeah.
They played there
Jamie.
Too.
Yeah. So when I was back in Scurvy Dogs, Jamie was our drummer, and so we did that for years, and that kind of fizzled out and stuff like that. And then I'd start my own little weekend bands here, stuff like that, just to stay in the area. Got married, have some kids, and then recently, last few years, I did the Stormforce thing, and that's been my number one priority, man. So even with the big lockdowns here and stuff like that, it's I'm taking advantage of it. Still, it gives me more time. No more excuses. Let's get down and do some writing. Right. And that's what I do, man, all the time.
And it's great material. I was listening to some stuff that some people posted the last couple of days, and like impressive. And you never know, right? Like you just never know. You know that joke you always hear. Okay, the sound at the concert. We're gonna play one off our new album, and everybody kind of goes. But I was like, wow, I was blown away.
Well, thank you. Yeah. We're proud of the whole record, man, and because it took us 3 years, we had a lot of material that we can really hone in on and stuff like that to make sure what was on there is exactly what we wanted. And you've heard the old saying, you got your whole life to write your first record, and that's why a lot of bands their second record so good, because they had for 10 years they've been waiting for this record deal, and they got the record deal, and they know these songs inside out. They can play them in a coma. They can kill these songs, crush these songs. They know so well, and they know the response. They've honed them. Let's change this part. The crowd we lost them, and then all of a sudden the second, okay, you're on tour for a year. Okay, where's that second record? What? We were partying for the year, man. Come on, guys, we got to write. That's what happens. You put something subpar out, and then you look back later and it's like, oh God, I wish I would have did this or did that instead. I wish we could have blah, 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 blah. But this record is none of that, man. We're 100%, all of us, all on board. And, if there's one little part we all weren't on board with, we would say, hey, that one part kind of bugs me. Really? Let's change it. We want to make sure and we all do, man. We love this record. We love the sound, all the songs, the performances, and I pat myself on the back. And you always want to make a record that you can listen to yourself.
Yes, absolutely. And you nailed it earlier too. Greg, you said that instead of having being under the thumb from the record company, do this, want a hit, want a single, want a slow song, whatever. Now you're in creative control, and you can do whatever the hell you want because there's no one pushing your buttons. And it's probably not about the money anymore. It's just about the fun and just the creative element you want to get off your chest.
That's exactly right, because when you do have a record label, you're basically a client now, and they're putting money in you, and they're trusting that you're going to come up with the goods to pay all that money they just gave you, right? You got to pay that money back. A lot of people don't realize that. You get $100,000 record contract, you got to pay that money back. It's not like, here, man, whatever, right? So it's in your best interest to play the game and get singles and be commercial, right? You want to be commercial. Your appeal to everybody and stuff like that. So what happens to a lot of times, a lot of bands compromise to make them happy. They're pleasing them. So they're writing songs to them. They'll have 3 songs. Okay, here's 3 songs we're proud of. Well, we don't like those 2, but this song, we like this one. The other guys, okay. Meanwhile, with Stormforce, no, all 3 of these songs are killer. We don't care who says otherwise. We're in control. And that's what you hear. It is 100% us. We didn't compromise to anybody. And that's the beauty about being able to make your own music these days. You're not under the gun for somebody else saying, hey, where's this hit single you're supposed to have? Because that's what they want. Back in the day, they want 3 singles, right? A lead off mid-tempo, maybe a hard rocker, your second one a ballad, and the third one, if you do get one, more commercial to keep the things going. But a lot of times you're stripping things back just to please them, and that's why a lot of bands that made it big become like real drug addicts and alcoholics, because they felt like they weren't being true to themselves.
Right. It makes sense. It does make sense.
Like that's not the real me, and then they'll make a solo record, and a lot of times it'll flop, but they're trying to, this is what I really meant us to be. And, so it's weird, but we're proud of this record, man. Don't mind me. I just keep rambling on.
No. And I hope you don't say, fuck you, you're totally wrong. But I listen to the tunes, and I get a real almost European sense to what it is. Like, I think like some of those, I hear elements of, old Rainbow, and I hear elements of, old Whitesnake and stuff like that. Am I off the mark there?
No, totally on board there. Yeah, that's my roots, man. Led Zeppelin, number 1, Deep Purple, Whitesnake, UFO, big, huge Michael Schenker UFO fan. Yeah. Scorpions, all those bands are European, other than, Van Halen and early Kiss. all my influences are all mostly British. My first biggest influence was Elton John, right? That's like,
Okay.
it was before Kid. Like I was, let me see, 1976. I'm 57, so 76 is when Destroyer came out. So I was 13 years old. So before, yes, when I was about 10, 11, 12 years old, I was a huge Elton John fan, and who is British, right? And so
Yeah.
they got a different. They almost, a lot of times, if you listen to Elton John and stuff, sometimes they have a little bit more of a classical approach to their music, and being European, and then where a lot of Americans have more of a blues approach. You can tell, like I could tell a lot, like American, like if you listen to me, like early, like Sammy Hagar, that's an American, Ted Nugent, that's an American.
Yeah.
They don't European at all, right? No. And then you listen to like UFO and stuff like that. There's where they're going to put piano and orchestra, a lot of orchestration and stuff like that. And so that's my roots, man. And I still listen to all that music today. Same band, I still listen.
I was going to ask you that next. What you were listening to today? If I was to pull at your iTunes list, what would be on it? So that, I guess you answered my question.
I keep up with a lot of the newer bands too, and a lot of the ones I do like are Europeans still. I mean, Heat. Are you familiar with Heat from Sweden? Mm-hmm. Check them out. Phenomenal band. Another one's Eclipse, also from Sweden. Killer band. Another band from Sweden. I like their latest record. Why am I forgetting their name? Anyways, there's a bunch. Goddard from Switzerland. Killer band, man. Yeah. We got to play when Brighton Rock went over to play the Firefest festivals, 2012 and also 2013. All these bands were there, and I was kind of fans of them before we got the chance to play with them. So it was great going over there. But definitely European influence for sure.
There's definitely some of that stuff, like you're on Blabbermouth and .net, and you see a band, where the hell did these guys come from? And they're very cool. Like Sweden tends to churn it a lot. Like there was that band, I don't know if you heard that band, Smile. They were check them out. They were basically Sweden's version of Motley Crue.
Okay.
But really kind of punky, but very, very cool. But I know, I just find European music seems to be a little bit more structured and a little less sloppy, and you know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, like I said, more. I think big part of it, especially for all and stuff like that. Like they didn't have the same back in the early 70s and 80s. They didn't have the same kind of radio as us, from what I've been told. Like we have FM, you have Q104, and you got different stations. They didn't have that. They had one station, BBC, I guess. I'm sure they had some private stations. So, they would hear like Little Richard or something. Then they'd hear some more like classical type stuff. Then they'd hear like Peggy Lee, and like really not just one genre of music. So I think that broadened their scope of when they're writing their own music, instead of just being one way. They're not afraid to take chances, because that's the way they grew up, and hearing all these different styles of music. It's not till you get later in life where no, you can only like this. You're not my friend unless you like this kind of music and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Your little club.
But some of that's the 70s stuff. That 70s stuff out of Britain. I mean, I was not a punk rocker per se, but I loved the Sex Pistols. I love some of that kind of stuff. I was a big Teenage Head fan here in Canada. It was just the kind of edgier stuff. It doesn't have to be right in your face, all the time, but it was melodic. And you're right, you almost hear like a little classical background, but it was still blues driven. But it was like anger, that raw anger, polished, and it was a really neat sound. And you're right. That's the unsafe music that I think I enjoyed. Probably sounds like the same kind of stuff you were into as well, right?
Absolutely. Like, when I was 18, I moved to my father was living in not too far from here in a city called Cambridge, right next to the store to Kitchener. Yep. And one of the guys, I was looking for a job between bands, I wanted to buy a new Marshall, and I had to need some money quick. And another guy said, well, this guy can maybe get you a job. And so I meet this guy, and he's a punk rocker. So but we got along great. And all he wanted was the Pistols and, all that stuff, right? And so we'd make fun of each other all the time, right? But so then, he talked me into going to a concert. And did you ever hear of a band called 999?
No.
Yeah, check them out. Check 999 out. They're a punk band that never really made it over here. We went to see them in Hamilton, and the place was sold out. I had no idea who they were. Great, man. Great melodies, but real attitude for sure. You know, when you're 18, like I'm not used to seeing it other than Teenage Head. You don't really see punk bands and stuff like that. These guys, they were dangerous. I mean, it felt like you know, like any second,
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah.
Go like start punching us or something, right? It's so crazy, but it's appealing for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I got a chance to party with Steve Jones, the lead guitar player from the Sex Pistols, at a place called the Cat House in Hollywood way back, and he was a cool guy. He wasn't partying; he was sober at the time. I was partying, so I made up for him.
Yeah.
Cool guy. Yeah. You know, at first I'm not. Should I go say hi to him? You know, is it like, you know, these punk rockers, they could be unpredictable, right?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, in your face or something, just for the laugh, right? But no, he's a cool guy, yeah. And I love it to this day. That first was basically the only Sex Pistols record. Yeah. His guitar is amazing. It's killer sound, man. You know, a lot of those punk bands always had crappy sound, you know, but they sound fantastic.
They did.
Sure.
That's true. Now, how did you guys survive? Because we talked about this, and I might as well mention it because we seem to talk about it a lot. I mean, that early 90s stuff is when the Seattle sound was coming, the grunge was taking over. I mean, and we talked about this last night with Dave, too, from Smigali. And the fun rock stuff that we were all into, you know, the Motley Crue, the Poisons, the Bon Jovis, all the stuff, you know, that was this positive, fun, danceable, hard rock music went away. In one fell swoop with that Seattle sound. So how did you folks deal with that?
Well, it became gloomy, man. And all the big bands, if you think about it, they weren't like Pearl Jam. They're not happy. None of their songs are like, you know, happy at all, right? Nirvana, Soundgarden, they're all, you know, like I like a lot of the stuff, like especially Soundgarden, sounded amazing. The guitars and stuff remind me of Tony Iommi from Sabbath and stuff, but we're all sad in a certain way and negative, and like we've got no hope in this, and you know, and then you look back at the 80s and you got Poison and Crew and Van Halen and, you know, Cinderella and Twisted Sister, where everything's so you just deal with it, man. It's like anything in life. How do you deal with it? We dealt with the 90s just like nothing's really changed too much since the 90s, if you really think about it. There's been a resurgence, I think, in our style of music, the 80s in 2 years, but that's you know, I think just people are feeling a lot more nostalgic and stuff like that. But, 90s, man, it was tough to get through, but it is what it. How'd you guys deal with it?
Well,
I didn't play.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, we stopped playing. I had kids. It's like I might as well, you know, that's it. I might as well. Didn't shoot myself per se, but I was looking for an identity. You know, you kind of lost your identity. You cut your hair, it's like, oh, now who am I? You know what I mean? It was a little bit lost for a little while. So it was a little bit.
Yeah. Well,
weird.
For what I did, it's like after I did the tour with the Helix, you know, like I said, I was doing the weekend, you know, covers and stuff like that with buddies of mine, and my bass player, Stevie Screeve, we had an acoustic duo called The Classics. We did that for 10, 15 years, and it was great. It was just me and him. We have a few beers and play all our favorite songs, you know, a lot of rock songs. We just, hey, let's try that and play it acoustic, right? And, you know, some good money, man. A lot of corporate gigs and stuff like that, and word get around and get past her. Hey, I like you guys. Can you do my? Yes, we'll do your event also, right? And you know, it didn't have the glamour of being a Brighton Rock by no means, but we still had a blast because we're doing, you know, it's better than digging a ditch or something, you know. So, hey,
amen, brother. Amen there.
Shit.
Yeah.
And the thing is too is a lot of because I still you know, I play in a band that plays in Halifax, and the college kids, their parents grew up listening to the genre that we loved, so they're familiar with it. Like they're into the stuff now, but they know the tunes. Like they know all the tunes, so it is kind of cool. And for you to play the Monsters of Rock must have been great because you're up there playing it and then you get to see it. But it is making a resurgence, and I think it's because, you know, that, you know, the people that were our age are now their parents now, right?
Well, that's the thing, and you know, you got to remember, like, you know, you said you seen this when you're barely of age and stuff like that. So then that's your teen. going into your 20s, right? And those are the best times of your life. And all of a sudden you hit your 30s. Now it's okay. We got to start settling down here and get real, right? So you get married, right? Get a job and have kids, and then you're watching your kids grow up, right? So then, 20 years go by, 20, 25 years, and now you're in your 50s. Now your kids, the kids are doing what they want. They're not relying on you. So freedom like you did back in your 20s. So now it's like, and all of a sudden, what? Poison is playing? Yeah, let's go see them and relive your youth. I mean, every time one of my favorite touring bands still to this day probably is my favorite live band to watch is Judas Priest. Every time they come back here, I see them every tour, every time, and I'm just like I'm 16, 17 years old. I'm like, yeah.
And they were awesome. Yeah. They were played Halifax about 5 years ago, and I was blown away at how good they were. Now, KK wasn't in the band then, but it was I think Glenn Tipton was still there, and what a wicked sound, and the same energy. It was super tight, and it was bigger than life, and it was, obviously we love shows. Like we're Halifax, actually, this area loves a big show. We always like a big light show and pyrotechnics and whatever else you can put out there. The bigger the show, the better. And they did not disappoint Judas Priest enough. Well, it's much like yourselves. That's the thing. I hate to go watch Brighton Rock or even Stormforce in a coffee house. That'd be kind of a drag, because I'm used to the big show. But I mean, the fact is you're doing the songs that you love, and that's the biggest part of it. You're right. I get it.
Yeah, man. Right on. Yeah. So you do what you got to do just to keep surviving, my friend.
Yep. Well, that's it. I think that's why a band like Steel Panther's having the run that they're having, because they're a throwback. I mean, they're a parody, but they're wicked players. You know what I mean? But I mean, they're reminding people of the day, and maybe some people didn't get to hang out in the day. I mean, you mentioned the Cat House. Not too many people in these parts get to say they hung out at the Cat House, man.
Nope.
Well, we wrote last record. Like our first record was mixed in LA. So when, in 1986, when it was getting mixed, that's where I met David Lee Roth. That's when I met Ronnie James Dio. I met Little Richard, Alice Cooper, like all in that same, and we're in Hollywood. And that's when 5150, the Van Halen record, was just coming out. Like the single just came out. And here I am in Hollywood listening to Van Halen. And it's like, this is unreal, man. So we hung out at the Rainbow all the time, and the Whiskey, and, the Roxy, and yeah. Then we got to go play that. We never got to play any other place. We played the Country Club. That's a very famous place. But it was a blast, man. Yeah, the Cat House was a really cool club for sure.
You must be losing your mind, man. You must have been just losing your mind, right? Here's this little kid from Niagara Falls, like, here I am.
I mean, just, like we were talking earlier about Rainbow and stuff like that. Like Ronnie James Dio is one of my favorite, singers of all time. And we're at Amigo Studios mixing our record. That's the same studio that Van Halen did their first record at. Same thing, away in Studio B. So I'm sitting there watching TV, and I keep looking at the door. Seems going to come out of the studio, and sure enough, Dio comes out. I look at him. He goes, "Hey, you got any papers?" Oh, holy shit, Ronnie, how you doing, man? So, we're talking about meeting good guys. He was probably the best rock star I've ever met in my life.
Richie Blackmore? Was he there then?
What's that?
Richie Blackmore with Rainbow in '86? I think he was, wasn't he?
No, this was solo.
Solo. Right.
The second record by then.
Right. Sorry.
But he literally gave me. What's that?
Well, it's good to hear, because I mean, you hear so many things about Ronnie James Dio, and he's definitely one of my favorites for sure.
What's the thing, and he was making me a coffee. I got so relaxed with him. Like after about a half an hour, we're just sitting there because nothing's going on in the studio. We're just talking about whatever, right? I got so relaxed and comfortable with him that you forget that he's a rock star. And it's like, right. I walked on and go tap him, man. We'll talk later. Yeah, okay, man. Then I walked away, and 10 minutes later, I'm going, oh my, that was Ronnie James. Shit. I go back out there, he's gone, and never seen him ever again, right?
And none of your buddies believe you. No, you didn't meet Ronnie James.
Yeah, they'd be like, "Hi, Ronnie, just a second. Click, 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 click." Yeah.
Look at my Facebook page. I got a picture, and I actually posted it not too long ago. So
that's awesome, man.
Picture, yeah, cool, yeah, for sure.
Greg, we probably shouldn't keep you any longer. Listen, I want to ask you, like, where can folks hear more about Stormforce now? Like, is there a website? Is there some stuff that's
Yep, stormforce.ca. We have a official Facebook page. We're on, you can buy our CD and, autograph if you want. We sell those. And we're on, Apple and iTunes and all that Snapchats. I don't know what we're on, man. All the
You're good. You're good if we post that.
Absolutely. I hope you do. That'd be great. I appreciate if you do. For sure. Yeah.
And I appreciate the post that you gave us a shout out there last week, which I certainly appreciate because it's we're having fun with this thing, and it's like we said to Dave last night, we've had a shitty little rundown here in Nova Scotia the last 3.5-4 months, but it's things are looking up. So.
What's the thing? All my band, I'm friends with a lot of bands because that's my circle. So you get know guys over the years and decades, and so when I seen about the Crazy Horse, all my other buddies that played there, I thought they're gonna get a kick out of this, man. And, we all remember that because you have your certain bars in each province that you remember. Those are the one bar, that's for sure. For sure, man. It was
a great stage, and man, you guys fucking took charge of that stage, and it was such a great time. You're just the right music at the right time. It was perfect. It really was perfect, And
am I mistaken, or did they have a curtain in front of the stage that would open up?
Yep.
They did. Okay, because that's the only place I've ever seen. There's
the Palace had a too. I don't think the Moon had though. No, the Moon didn't.
No.
But the Palace had one. The Palace was there's four technically, three main cabarets in Halifax. You had the Misty Moon, the Palace, which is just up the street from each other, and then over in Dartmouth, where Sean and I lived, was the Crazy Horse.
Right.
And it was just a great rock bar. It was just all rock all the time. It was a great bar.
And you guys probably would have stayed, if you remember, at the Ambassador Hotel, which was just down the road, because that's usually where they kept the bands.
Probably did.
Yeah. Well, because I remember when Sire played here, I met Jamie because we went back to a party that they had that was actually pretty well behaved. Better than Sven Galley, who got a police escort to the friggin' airport when they played here. But
yep, that's those guys.
Yeah.
Go big or go home, huh?
Yeah.
Go big and go home.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Greg, we sure appreciate you being on the show, brother. Seriously. And you know what? There'll probably be a ton of questions and stuff like that. I mean, if it's okay, we might call you back to come on again. If that's okay.
Sure. If our bass player Steve Screams, he would probably like to. He has a lot of good stories about Halifax, and
absolutely,
he loves to talk.
Can you connect me with him?
Will, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And like I say, I keep saying it. Thanks so much for not being a dick, because like I say, I grew up listening to you, and it's so nice to meet guys that you grew up listening to that aren't dicks, man. And you're a beauty, and I can live with the Blackhawks. If it was Canadians, they might have had a little bit of a problem. Yeah.
No, that's wicked.
Appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. And you guys are awesome also. And anytime, you just reach out and we'll do it again. I'll get a hold of Screeps for you. And let's
connect
ride.
me for sure. That'd be good. Great, brother. Thanks so much.
Man, we appreciate it. Thanks so much, Greg.
Cheers.
All right. You take care, brother.
That was great.